Our gospel reading comes from Matthew chapter 5, beginning with verse 21. This is part of the Sermon on the Mount. Jesus said, "You have heard that it was said to those of old, 'You shall not murder.' And whoever murders will be liable to judgment. But I say to you that everyone who is angry with his brother will be liable to judgment. Whoever insults his brother will be liable to the council. Whoever says, 'You fool,' will be liable to the hell of fire. So if you are offering your gift at the altar and there remember that your brother has something against you, leave your gift there before the altar and go. First be reconciled to your brother, and then come and offer your gift. Come to terms quickly with your accuser while you are going with him to court, lest your accuser hand you over to the judge, and the judge to the guard, and you be put in prison. Truly I say to you, you will never get out unless you have paid the last penny. You have heard that it was said, 'You shall not commit adultery.' But I say to you that everyone who looks at a woman with lustful intent has already committed adultery with her in his heart. If your right eye causes you to sin, tear it out and throw it away. For it is better for you to lose one of your members than that your whole body be thrown into hell. And if your right hand causes you to sin, cut it off and throw it away. For it is better that you lose one of your members than that your whole body go into hell. It was also said, whoever divorces his wife, let him give her a certificate of divorce. But I say to you that everyone who divorces his wife, except for the grounds of sexual immorality, makes her commit adultery. And whoever marries a divorced woman commits adultery. Again, you have heard that it was said to those of old, 'You shall not swear falsely, but shall perform to the Lord what you have sworn.' But I say to you, do not take an oath at all, either by heaven, for it is the throne of God, or by the earth, for it is his footstool, or by Jerusalem, for it is the city of the great King. And do not take an oath by your head, for you cannot make one hair white or black. Let what you say be simple, yes or no. Anything more than this comes from evil." This is the gospel of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
All right. Well. We got some stuff here. Who are we when no one is watching? When no one's around, when no one can see? Who is that person? When no one is watching us. If no one knows about it, and no one gets harmed, think about this. Is it really bad? I mean, there's no consequence whatsoever. Is it really bad? This is one of those, if the tree falls in the forest, does it make a sound? You know, the philosophical question. If I do something when no one else is looking, does it really have an effect? I don't know if any of you have had the wonderful privilege of driving in California. Anyone on a business trip? Yes, business trip. You've lived there for a short period of time. I grew up there for my first 30 years. I tell you what, driving in California is an experience of a lifetime. It is crazy town. Nutty. People drive crazy in California. It's a tradition. The roads there are really wide. There's almost no potholes because the weather is perfect all year round. And people just don't ever worry about, conditions. So they drive incredibly fast. If you see a 55 in California, it means 70. And if you see a 65, which is 10 more miles, that means just keep it under 90 in California. I'm telling you, it's the truth. My California buddies are like, we've known this for years. The reason there's so much traffic in they have proven this, by the way. The reason why there's so much traffic in California is not because there's too many cars, right? The freeways have like 10 lanes on each side, right? It's not that there's too many cars. It's that people drive too fast. They show it on the video, they drive and then they come, and they have to stop and you have to stop even more and even more. It's all about driving. The drivers are the ones that cause the traffic. When I was young and driving in California in my teens and in my youth and 20s, we used to have a saying. This was a very common saying when we would come up to stop signs. Because there isn't a lot of stop signs in California. If there's a four-way stop, they put a light there like the next day, It's not like here where there's, you have to pay for the light and then it takes like 15 million years to get done, or unless you're a church, then we have to put it out right away, even though the other side's not even built, right? California, there's hardly any stop signs. So we have this thing called no cop, no stop. Right? You get up to the stoplights sections and everything, and you just kind of like looking around for cops and like, nope, all right. And you just got to go through. There's another term for it called the California roll. Yeah, the California roll. Yes. You know this because there's that classic 90s movie, Clueless, where I totally paused. Do you remember this? No, nobody saw that movie. Yeah, the Clueless movie. Yeah, as if I paused. Anyway, it's a total thing. But think about it. If no authority figure is there to bust you, Brian, is it wrong? If there's no consequence, nobody gets hurt, and there's no residual effect, is this a problem? This is what Jesus is bringing out in the Sermon on the Mount at this point, in this part of it. He's bringing this to the surface in his sermon. What's going on the inside? Why is he bringing this up? The law had become this thing that you would prove your righteousness to other people. This is the community he's in. You see him talk about the Pharisees and the scribes all the time. Like, on the outside you're this, but on the inside. He does this all the time. So that's the culture that he's in right now. That's all about outward appearance. Jesus said, you have heard that it was said of old, you shall not murder. He starts off with the big one, right? Nobody's done this, right? They're like, oh, come on, Jesus. Nobody's murdered. You got to be crazy to murder, right? And he says, you have said that it was from old, you shall not murder. But then he takes it a step further and says, but I say to you, anyone who cancels his brother in anger or humiliates him is liable to the judgment seat. He goes from almost nobody to everybody. We've all done this. Oh no. But why am I being judged for anger? It's inside. If I don't let it out and I don't make a big scene about it, why can't I just be angry? That should be healthy. What is that about? Everyone gets angry. I have the right to cancel other people and their opinions off my social media page, right? Or kick them out of my life with their terrible opinions. It is a privilege to be a part of my entourage, right? Oh, then Jesus really messes with them. He really stirs things up. He says, It's not just about you having something against your brother. Rather, if they have something against you, go and reconcile with them first. Before you receive the means of grace, go. Settle the matter between you and them, or you will be forced to compromise with a third party. And that could be much worse. Is this good advice? Leave the lawyers out of it? I don't know, is it? Is that what we want to do? Settle things beforehand? Then Jesus gets really out there. Did you notice this part? If your eye causes you to stumble, pry it out of your head and throw it in the trash. If your hand causes you to stumble, cut it off. Dump it in the wastebasket. That's crazy. Nobody wants to do this. Is Jesus serious? Yes, but not in the way you think. He's also trying to make a point about the severity and the consequences of our thoughts in connection with our deeds. You're shocked by the eye and hand thing, but he wants you to see something bigger. He wants you to be equally shocked and aware of how your thoughts affect your own behavior. Oh, but it's much deeper than that. People rarely accidentally sin. They just don't. I mean, it's rare that we sin by accidents. Most people plan and imagine their terrible, destructive behavior. Maybe not the consequences or the aftermath, but we do think about what we're going to do next before we sin. That's a part of it. We lust after the pizza. We imagine how good it tastes. And then we step on the scale the next morning and we're horrified. Oh my goodness, I only had one piece. Like, you had 4 pieces and 3 beers. What are you talking about? You're crazy, right? I also wanted to say something about the divorce example, because we've had divorced people and people seem to freak out over that, always. And he's talking about so much more than that. So I do want to address it. I know some of you haven't been divorced. You're like, doesn't apply to me. I'm not divorced. It does apply to you. It's using as an example to talk about a bigger thing. And if you have been divorced, you're like, I'm doomed. No, you're not doomed. Just listen. What it's saying is that your dishonorable or self-centered acts of sin don't just affect you. They affect other people who are forced to experience something that they wouldn't normally have to experience. And it's making you aware of that through that example, because it's a great example to kind of show, that sort of thing. He's using it as an example. He doesn't want you to cut your actual hand off. It's a way of describing something bigger. Okay, so how does this all relate to the big picture? Can't wait to share this. I want to say one thing about the yes be yes and the no be no. Even the phrase, let your yes be yes and your no be no, has to do with this also. It all relates. Don't say, I swear to God, or I swear on my mother's grave, or I swear on a stack of Bibles. That's ridiculous. Don't do that. It's terrible. You're trying to create some trustworthiness in the spiritual sense that isn't yours to possess. You're not paying attention. So what Jesus is saying, and how this relates to the big picture, is don't just create a public persona. Don't just create a person that everyone else sees, as if no one is watching what's on the inside. You have this relationship with right and wrong, is what he's saying to these people who he's preaching to. You have this relationship with right and wrong as it relates to your public image, but you are acting like you have no relationship with God. You have given right and wrong this high first place, as if it's a God himself. You try and have this relationship with the law and the rules without having a relationship with the God who actually ultimately enforces those rules. Don't miss that last part. This is what every atheist ignores. And why we live in a world where we have the mentality, if it doesn't harm another person, then why is it wrong? That's why we live in that culture right now. Jesus is telling the people, you're not just people who follow the law of Moses. You are in a relationship with the God who gave you the laws for your benefit. And that God knows and sees all in secret. And the person you are in secret is the same person that you are in the world of your so-called public persona. Jesus says, you can sum the law and the prophets up in 2 sentences. And those 2 sentences are almost the same sentence. Love God with all your heart and all your mind and all your soul. And he says the next one is exactly like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. Paul says, I can do this, I can do that. But if I do not love, what good is it? It's meaningless. If I have no relationship with others, it's meaningless. You hear this all through the scriptures. The rich man and Lazarus, the same theme. The rich young ruler, remember the rich young ruler who said, I followed the law my whole life since I was a boy. You know that guy? Jesus says, yeah, give up all your stuff. Come follow us. Let's have a relationship with the world. Oh, I can't leave my bubble. I can't give up my stuff. Wait a minute. That's my identity. Wait a minute. That's my identity. Jesus, in this portion of the Sermon on the Mount, is encouraging his audience to see not only the outer world of their experience, but the inner world of their hearts and how it is the driving force in their life. So let us continue this morning with the means of grace. Let us receive the gift that Jesus has given us in such a way that even in the physical, we can experience God coming into our eternal life inside and living in us as grace-filled people. And we will go out into the world and be that exact bread for the hungry, giving them the gift of God's love and God's grace, giving them the shirt off our back, giving them the benefit of the doubt, giving them the love that God has put in us through his word. Amen?